Hi, I'm Michelle Adubato. The North Ward Center is committed to educating the public about the importance of community programs that give all New Jersey residents a chance for a better life. That's why we're proud to support the important educational programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Russell Berrie Foundation, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, the North Ward Center, New Jersey Resources, ADP, a comprehensive provider of human resources technology and services, the Fidelco Group, and by Fedway Associates. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Monthly, the magazine of the Garden State, available at newsstands, and by Insider NJ.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
You start generations and generations of people going to college, you know, becoming the lawyer, doctors, whatever it is you want to do, you start generations of that.
Well, Dorian's great, and like she teaches us more than like just like inside school things, like how to make friends. Like she also teaches us about like economic problems and like things that's going around in the world.
I learned self-confidence, time management, and how to react in certain situations.
They're basically like big sisters who like help you and like teach you and like lead you and guide you.
It's honestly a good experience because you get to see those that you're mentoring grow into becoming a leader just like you.
You saw the video, and here she is, the leader right here. A Dorian Murray Thomas, founder, She Wins Incorporated, a terrific organization. We met you at the Russell Berrie Awards for Making a Difference. You were recognized with your colleagues. Tell folks what She Wins is all about.
So thank you, Steve. She Wins is a leadership and social action organization for middle and high school girls based in my hometown of Newark, particularly those affected by violence. Always, always. You got to represent the brick city.
Brick city. But you know it well, and you know it in a way that, unfortunately, you'd rather never have known it this way. When you talk about violence and young girls affected by violence, this isn't some philosophical or theoretical thing for you. It's real.
So when I was 7 years old, my father was gunned down just 2 blocks from my house on his way to go pay my school tuition, of all things. And so our lives really kind of changed drastically. And at 7, when the man who's tucking you in at night, taking you to school, you find out that one day he's just gone, there's really no sort of normal way to react. And so at that age, you know, I went from being, you know, the perfect kid in school, always, you know, at 7, you don't really get A's and B's, right? You get the checks and check pluses. Right. When we get all the checks and check pluses to ending up at the principal's office every day and really kind of struggling with that trauma. So it wasn't until years later where I really got to kind of think back to, 1, what was going through my 7-year-old head, and then 2, what made the difference, so that even though I struggled a little bit academically and behaviorally right after my father's death, I still was able to come back, right? What charged that recovery in a healthy way? And so there were 2 things. 1, it was having a safe space. Regardless of what happened, my mother was always there. And, you know, she was a teacher and a social worker, and so she poured into me and invested in me and made me feel safe, right? And then the second thing was really being able to feel that in the midst of the storm, I still had an opportunity to change an issue that affected my life most. And so years later, the same girl who lost her father on the streets of Newark will end up doing mentoring to other kids in the city who went through who went through similar situations, would end up volunteering at different organizations, because I knew that being a part of making my community better helped me better understand and work through what I went through.
How did you figure that out?
You know what, Steve? 1, it didn't happen alone, right? When we talk about social change and we talk about particularly improving the lives of young people, none of it happens in a vacuum. And so my mother, my school communities, my incredible teachers, my church community, all these different individuals and institutions even, right, that stepped in and helped me not only see my own greatness, but also catalyze that to give back to the city that gave so much to me.
So how did the young girls who have been affected by violence in the city find you and She Wins?
So it's through a few things. A lot of it ends up being with our direct relationships with schools and organizations in the city. So we have guidance counselors, teachers, educators, social workers who know about the work we do. And they recommend and refer young girls to our programs. We enroll them in our summer leadership program. And then what happens is that once you're in She Wins, you never really leave, right? We have our model really is focusing on capturing our girls through 7th and 8th grade in middle school and supporting them through high school. So that way there's this long-term engagement and really a resilience-based focus that allows our girls to not only have this sort of consistent cohort that they can kind of stick with year to year, but also that they can come back to and mentor girls who are coming up after them. So what you guys just saw in the video were some of our high school scholars who started with us at 13 and 14 years old, right? Now in their junior years of high school, and they are actually mentoring, guiding, and helping facilitate service learning projects with the 9th and 8th graders.
You know, it's interesting at the Russell Berrie Awards for Making a Difference, there were so many other people being recognized in different fields. What was it like for you to be around so many extraordinary leaders who are, quote unquote, making a difference?
Yeah, so what I told you during our interview.
We did an interview there as well,
was that our girls were actually there. We actually had 6 of our high school scholars there in the room. And so it was incredible, one for me, you know, as an educator, as a nonprofit leader, to be surrounded by so many other
you were
incredible.
one of the youngest people there.
I was. So just to have that intergenerational element, right? It was really powerful to see so many other people who are committed to this work in that space, and for us to kind of, you know, brainstorm. We were networking. We were saying, look, we should work together. I know you're in Trenton.
You were schmoozing.
We were schmoozing. I mean, you got to schmooze to do the work, right?
You've learned networking.
You have to. But then also for our girls to see that, you know what, we can be here too. I tell them in 10 years, 5 years, I want to be coming to your Russell Berrie Award. I'm going to be in the audience as you get it, because they are the change. You know, our girls give back more than 500 hours of service learning hours every year. The girls, Steve, right?
Hold on. The young women who have been affected terribly by violence, they give back.
Absolutely.
Why? Hasn't enough happened to them that they should just take? Devil's advocate, you say?
You know what's interesting? I strongly believe that people who are most affected by issues are those most equipped to help find their solutions.
Like you.
Like me. And here's what's interesting too. Our girls, the majority of them have either lost a parent or sibling to violence, have been in a situation where they know someone, maybe in their school or in their community, who has been affected by violence. But then there's also this other contingent of our girls who don't necessarily share that story, but have this burning feeling that this is my city, this is my community, I love it, but I don't always feel safe here. What can I do to change it? And so what we do is empower all our girls, regardless of where they come from, their backgrounds and their stories, to see that these changes exist, but so do their solutions. And you're more than your pain, you're more than your trauma, right? You can work through that and develop an opportunity for you to not only achieve your goals for yourself, but also realize the goals and the vision you have for your city.
So I'm curious about this. There's a mentorship piece that I'm fascinated by. You teach mentoring?
Yes.
You teach mentorship?
Yeah, so it's almost like a 2-tiered approach, right? I teach mentorship to the girls as well as our community partners and our volunteers, and then they mentor the middle and high school girls underneath them.
All right, so here's the tricky question. As a student of leadership, as a teacher of leadership, I'm curious. It sounds like a cliche question, but I'm looking at you thinking, are great leaders born or made and taught to be this?
I think it's a both and.
Were you born to be a leader?
Absolutely.
But you didn't know it at 7 years of age when this horrific thing happened to you.
And you know, it's funny, I just was telling someone this just the other day. I was born and raised in Newark, right? I ended up graduating high school from a high school actually right outside of Newark, and then college outside of Newark too. But when I tell you that there were people in my middle school, born and raised in Newark just like me, who were just as smart, equally as capable, but didn't always end up in the right situations, we're all born great. We're all born with talents. We're all born to be leaders. But you have to have the water, the sun, all these other elements to nurture those seeds.
That's right.
And so I think it's a both thing. I think that we're all born with something unique to offer the world, but we also have to have this other space to cultivate it. And She Wins does that for our girls. And more importantly, Steve, they do that for themselves. And they do that for the rest of their city.
You're not just a great leader, you're a great communicator, and
Thank you.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate
Proud
it.
of you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Newarkers unite, right? Brick City all day.
All day. Who else? All right, who's the most famous person from the city? I don't mean like Sarah Vaughan back in the day.
Right, I was saying that.
Who is it?
Whitney Houston.
It's Shaq. Oh, see?
How'd
It's
you
Whitney
miss
Houston.
Whitney?
I'm
What?
sorry.
I mean, Shaq
I'm
too,
sorry.
but
It's
like,
Shaq
come
too.
on.
I hear you. I apologize. Dorian Murray Thomas, we could do this all day. Founder, She Wins. Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you,
job.
Steve.
Check us out after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're pleased to welcome Mr. Patrick R. Young, President, Population Health, Hackensack Meridian Health. Good to see you, Pat.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing great. You are one of the nation's top experts when it comes to this thing called population health. This is part of our ongoing series on the future of healthcare. How are they tied together?
Well, I think...
What is it, by the way?
What is population
Yeah.
health? Well, population health is when you take a look at a grouping of individuals together and try to see if there's commonalities about those individuals, and then how can you use data to improve the quality of care and lower the costs of those individuals. So example is that, you can look at a population that doesn't have any signs of diabetes, but there will be indications that they could be what's called a rising risk. So if by getting that information, you can start to manage that population. Or by using data analytics and algorithms, you can identify potential serious illnesses that haven't necessarily manifested themselves, but you can see that there's warning signs. And you use that data, and then you use care coordinators who intervene, working with the local primary care physicians or specialists to help manage the care better.
Pat, doesn't that require being, quote, out in the community to do that?
It does. So we actually have care coordinators who are out in the physician practices who help the physician manage the care of those patients that are under our organization.
I'm curious about this. I've known your organization for a long time. I've done some leadership development there.
Absolutely.
And we talk about some communication issues sometimes. Why am I raising this? Because it strikes me that as I talk to clinicians and other professionals sometimes in the field, the jargon, the clinical jargon and the language often gets in the way of the ability to communicate in a conversational, understandable fashion. Sure. Real challenge, or is it just in my mind?
No, it is, because I think that, primary care physicians and specialists have primary focus is to meet with the patients.
That's right.
And trying to get information to them to make their jobs easier is what we should be doing as an organization. And to try to make that data, not just providing data, but make it useful data, actionable data, which really helps them.
You keep talking about data. Is it number driven?
Some of it is clearly numbers driven. I mean, it's if we can at least provide a listing to doctors who are the patients that haven't had a BMI, their body mass index, or they haven't had an eye exam. Just giving that information so that they know that in the practices is helpful.
That's population health.
That's a part of it, yes.
In action.
Absolutely.
You had a knee replacement.
I did.
What is the connection between that and population health?
So, well, right now Medicare has a comprehensive joint replacement program where the government wants to fund, and they are funding, based on the outcome. So traditionally in the United States, everyone gets paid, and the physicians have been paid in hospitals, fee for service. So the more you do, the more you get paid. So the federal government says, we want to pay you on outcome. So what they say is, we're going to pay you for a knee replacement, but anything that happens for 90 days after that, we're not going to pay again. So if that patient gets readmitted or something happens, we're not going to pay them.
Well, then who pays for it?
The hospital does. The hospital is at risk.
Talk about the future of healthcare.
Yep.
The future of how healthcare is paid for is changing dramatically.
It absolutely is. So we need to work really diligently so that those individuals have a positive outcome. They don't get readmitted. And so for myself, I had a total knee replacement. And an example is that for post-acute services, after a person leaves the hospital, in New Jersey, about 70% of individuals who have knees and hips go to skilled nursing facilities. Across the country, the average is about 29%.
Wow.
So it's not that people shouldn't go to skilled nursing facilities. The question is that care should be at the right place at the right time, right? And we need to make sure that they get the right care. And so for our organization, we're working with the orthopedic surgeons,
right.
With the primary care physicians, and we actually, in this program this past year, saved about $3.6 million because we were moving people out of skilled nursing facilities to home care. My own personal experience was that when I had my knee replaced, I went right home. The next day I went home, I had a nurse visit me at home, I had a physical therapist visit me at home. It was a better setting for me because, you know, you can get other infections at skilled nursing facilities. It doesn't mean, it's just that, you know, you're not sick when you have a knee replaced.
Well, hold on, what I'm curious about this is, so say you go home, you have the exercises.
Yeah.
You're doing your exercise, you're diligent because you're a healthcare professional, you understand it. You have the nurse come in?
Yeah, nurse comes in
well.
every day.
But if you, quote, don't rehab or don't get to where you need to be, results, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I'm confused about is there could be a variety of factors that impact your progress.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that all in the hospital?
Why is everyone in the hospital?
Why is all that on the hospital? Like,
well,
so that's what you did. Say someone else didn't do the exercise. Say someone wasn't diligent, or
Sure.
dare I use the word compliant. How is it all on everyone else but the patient?
That's how CMS Medicare has structured
CMS
the program,
is,
the federal
Medicare,
agency
right.
that oversees Medicare.
They're the ones who pay.
They pay, and they said this is the program. And I think what it really is saying is that, you know, healthcare doesn't end at the hospital. Healthcare never really ends. It's what happens prior to someone going into the hospital, meaning how can we help them be healthier lives, individuals, what happens at the hospital, and then what happens after the person leaves the hospital. So whether it's a skilled nursing facility or home care or physical therapy or whatever care they might need or follow-up visits, it's really important that we bring all of those organizations, all of those care providers together and really manage that. And if we can do that, we expect the outcome to be better.
You know, Patrick, as you're talking, I'm thinking more and more the quote-unquote future of healthcare in our state, in the state of New Jersey, and the nation, is going to rely more on patients, not just being more informed, which is why we're doing this, but also becoming more advocates for themselves.
They do need to. And, you know, for myself, I had said to the orthopedic surgeon, I want to go home the next day. And
you said that?
I said it. And he said, well, I'd like to have someone stay in the hospital for 3 days, and then we'll send you to a skilled nursing facility. And my comment was, you know, I'm not sick. I'm having a knee replaced. There's no reason why I can't go home. I actually wanted to go home the day the procedure was done, and the discussion was at least stay in for one night, and then we'll ship.
But that's you.
That's for me.
Who understands the system.
Correct.
Who understands, I'm not going to say the politics, relationships, if you will. Give some advice to the average person watching right now.
Well, I think, you know, to your point, I think individuals need to become more advocates for their own care and what takes place. Now, conversely, my uncle, who is 72, was in the same pre-surgery meeting that I was at. He was 72 years old. He had both his knees replaced. He didn't go right home right away because, again, it depends on the individual and their specific circumstances, their other illnesses they may have, you know, prior to having knee surgery. But I think that it's a situation where everyone has to take responsibility for their own care and proactively work with the physicians, the nurses, the care coordinators, and do everything we can to improve the outcome.
Finally, population health and everything associated with it not going away anytime soon.
I don't believe so. I think that
it's not the latest trend.
It's not a trend. It's you know, you talked about the financing of healthcare is changing. You know, the bottom line is the federal government, who is the biggest payer in the United States, wants to pay for the outcome. And so they want to pay for the results.
Is that also part of the Affordable Care Act?
It is. It's all wrapped in about the concept of really paying for performance.
Versus fee for service.
Versus fee for service.
Not going anywhere.
No, and it can only really be successful if the payers, the physicians, the hospitals, all the post-acute providers, everyone works together. And the patient work together to have a better outcome.
Patrick Young, one of the country's top experts when it comes to this very important field. Population health is more than a field. It's a lot more going on there. Population health at Hackensack Meridian Health. Good to see you, Patrick.
Thank you. It's great
Thanks, my
seeing you.
friend. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, Ph.D. and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
We are pleased to be joined once again by Dr. Robert Hoatson, president and founder of Road to Recovery. Good to see you, Bob.
You too, Steve.
I think
Thanks.
It's 4 or 5 times you've been with us.
Yep.
Your expertise, you're a former priest.
Yes.
You understand the sex abuse scandal in the priesthood better than anyone else in the Catholic Church. We just had Senator Joseph Vitale, check out that interview, who's calling for a grand jury investigation. The Attorney General in the state of New Jersey doing the same thing into this case. Pennsylvania did, as you called it, what?
I called Pennsylvania, a seminal study, seminal grand jury investigation.
Because?
Well, it left no stone unturned. It really looked into the depths of the crisis there.
And found?
And found 1,000 victims and 300 priests. And since the report was issued, hundreds have come forward to that same hotline.
What do we need to do in New Jersey? By the way, New Jersey has a hotline. Check out our site. And Jackie, let's make sure we get that website up, because dozens and hundreds of people are calling the Attorney General's website hotline on this.
Yeah, I applaud Attorney General Graywall for doing this. It has to be done. I've called for it for decades. As an insider for over 40 years in the church, I kind of knew what was going on there. And I know, I was kind of like a voice in the wilderness for a while, but now people are listening, and it's what has to be done.
It's interesting. I've never said this on the air before, but Ted McCarrick, the Archbishop of the Archdiocese I grew up in, elevated since then in the Catholic Church, in Metuchen, Archbishop there as well. He was an important figure in my life, my family's life. He was a spiritual advisor in my family.
Yeah.
Tell folks what he did.
Well, Ted McCarrick ordained me.
Allegedly did.
Well, he ordained me to the priesthood in 1997, but in 1994...
Well, he did do that.
Yeah.
What was the word for a long time, according to many in the church?
Well, before we knew about his pedophilic behavior, we knew that he was sleeping with seminarians, and he would invite seminarians en masse to his Jersey Shore house in Seagirt, and he would always be one bed short, and someone would have to sleep with him. I'm currently working with a priest in Metuchen who is still attempting to recover from all this.
Bob, who knew about this in the church hierarchy?
Everybody knew about it, Steve.
Did the Pope know about it?
I believe the Pope knew about it.
You don't know, you think.
I believe the Pope knew about it. I believe the cardinals knew about it. There wasn't anybody who didn't hear about Theodore McCarrick's antics.
Ted McCarrick was a giant in the Catholic Church. No one touched it. No one took it on.
No, because McCarrick was such a charismatic figure in many ways. He was very socially adept.
Politically active.
Engaged,
connected.
Engaged, right. When we've been trying to get the Child Victims Act passed in New Jersey, he called every legislator and told them not to do it, and they believed him.
He had juice, as we like to say in New Jersey.
Absolutely.
And where are we now with him?
Well, he's now a disgraced figure. He's living on by himself, and he will not get a cardinal's funeral. He will barely get a priest's funeral, if that.
Too little, too late?
Oh, much too little, too late. In '94, when I applied to become a priest here, I asked the question, is McCarrick still sleeping with the seminarians?
What?
Oh, yes, in '94. It was McCarrick who...
24 years ago as we do this program.
Oh, yes. Yes. McCarrick asked me to speak to Monsignor Bill Fedrowski, who at that time was the head of catechetics for the Archdiocese, because he had a similar story to me. He had been a brother. I was a brother. So he said, why don't you talk to Bill? My first question as we met in a little Spanish restaurant in Harrison was, Bill, has McCarrick stopped sleeping with the seminarians? I was afraid that I might be sucked into that because I had been abused previously as an Irish Christian brother.
By the way, I was trained by the Irish Christian Brothers, as you well know, at Essex Catholic and later at Iona.
I too.
Oh, boy. What do we need to do right now? Got a couple minutes left. What do we really need to do? Get action.
We need to hold these dioceses accountable. The Attorney General in Pennsylvania had a great has a great plan, had a great plan, and did it. When he had to raid diocese files, he did it.
Does the Attorney General of New Jersey need to be raiding files of diocesan offices?
I believe he does, because we have what is called secret files, and those secret files contain the most important information for the most part.
What about the statute of limitations?
We have to get rid of the statute of limitations and hopefully do our best getting rid of it. There shouldn't be any statute of limitations on murder of the soul. We don't have it on murder of the body. Yeah. We shouldn't have it on murder of the soul.
What does Road to Recovery do?
We work with sexual abuse victims and their families. We have worked with over 5,000 victims since 2003.
5,000.
Yeah, internationally.
Church says, trust us on this. We'll handle it ourselves.
No, the church cannot be trusted. It's been proven, clearly proven.
One more question that's personal for me and more personal for many watching. Folks say, I'm torn by going to church because I don't know where that money's going. It's hard for me to listen to a priest who's up there speaking because I don't know if he, in fact, was either engaged directly or was complicit in the process. Is that some wacky thinking?
Well, I feel for the people because I don't think they should give up their faith.
Right.
As I tell people, my faith has never been stronger.
Is the faith in the church?
Right. My religion has never been weaker, however, because I have a hard time dealing with those who are attempting to lead us in this religion. So what I would suggest to those folks is hold your church accountable, but continue, of course, to nourish yourself spiritually.
Bob Hoatson, Road to Recovery, I want to thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Steve.
Keep doing what you're doing to help
a
whole range of people who have been victims and should never have been in the first place.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Russell Berrie Foundation, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, the Northward Center, New Jersey Resources, ADP, the Fidelco Group, and by Fedway Associates. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
How do you create change? By cultivating hope. And we see that every day. In the eyes of our preschoolers, in the souls of the seniors in our Adult Day program, in the minds of the students at Robert Treat Academy, a national Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, in the passion of children in our Youth Leadership Development Program, in our commitment to connections at the Center for Autism, and in the heart of our community, the Northward Center, creating opportunities for equity, education, and growth.